Welcome to People Unplugged, the podcast from the creative team at People Unboxed. I'm Westy, Digital Director at People Unboxed. This is the People Unplugged podcast. Hi everyone, welcome to the show. So after a very much unplanned medical hiatus, I'm fair to say it's great to be back. I'm not going to go into more detail, but I wanted you to realise that there's a reason why we disappeared for 3 months, but it's great to be back. So I'm with Alex Woodward today. We're going to introduce Alex in a second, or rather Alex is going to introduce Alex in a second. Alex is someone who's, I think it's fair to say, taken really a bit of an unusual path into the world of learning and development. Starting out as a vehicle technician at Volvo, getting his hands dirty with the mechanics of things and how things work, and then sort of jumping into sort of people development, initially with EasyJet and now with Scania. So at a time when the entire industry, I'm sure, is being rewired around electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles and all that nice stuff, Alex is on a mission to throw out the slides to make people feel their development rather than just sort of sit through it. So when I heard that, I thought there's someone I need to chat to on the show. So can't wait to get into this one. As I say, great to be back. Hey, Alex, how you getting on?
Yeah, good. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, thanks very much for joining. So let's sort of throw the ball over to you a little bit, because I sort of did a bit of an intro. This sounds quite good when I did your intro, didn't it? But just tell me about you and your career. You can go back as far as you like, because I think for a lot of people thinking, how do you go from being a vehicle technician to someone who's leading or managing first-time leaders at Scania? So over to you, mate. Tell us how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so my career, quite rightly so, is a bit of a squiggly one. When I fell out of school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I kind of applied to many different apprenticeships, and light vehicle maintenance was what kind of came on my plate. So I rolled with a 3-year apprenticeship, which took me through all different diagnostic stuff and mechanical kind of diagnosis and that type of thing. And then I moved to Volvo for my apprenticeship. So I didn't do my apprenticeship with Volvo themselves. And then I worked my way up to master technician within Volvo. The development was fantastic there. Really, really enjoyed it. I think what I absolutely thrived on was actually supporting the apprentices that were in the workshop. So, seeing them develop and grow from someone that, that was in that position, and, their experience and their confidence just grew throughout. It made me go, do you know what? I absolutely love the impact that learning and development has, because I can see it, I've felt it. So I then moved to Volkswagen Group as a technical trainer. And they always say, the little saying, if you can't do the job, go and train it. So, I like to think that wasn't the case for me. But I moved to Volkswagen Group as a technical trainer. Again, I absolutely loved it. I, trained anyone from a service technician all the way up to master technician within the Volkswagen Group. They came from across the UK. And again, it was all very much hands-on learning, with theoretical stuff around that as well. But that's kind of, I think, where my passion for learning development really took off, because although I saw apprentices in my workshop kind of grow, actually doing it on a regular day-to-day basis, and that was my full-time job as well, I absolutely love this. Like this is me. And you know what? I'm quite a creative guy. I like to see where things can be improved, where we can make things better with training. And what VW saw was that actually I was really good at taking learning and going, okay, we could improve in these different areas. Let's try and make it a little bit more engaging here. Let's try and bring a little bit more stand up and talk and present back. So they kind of made a new dual role for me, where I would do, I was an instructional designer and a technical trainer at the same time. And I would do 1 month off, 1 month on, flicking between the two. And what was really nice was, certainly within the automotive industry world, there's a bit of a them and us culture with the workshop and then kind of like head office, or, like the backroom staff, right?
Yeah.
So what that really did was it brought that, I guess, engagement between the two areas, which was really nice. So I brought my kind of creativity skills to the creation. I, engaged with head office staff within the management teams, but then I brought that to the front of the delivery as well. And then, I kind of stepped out of the automotive industry to EasyJet, where I did a little bit of safety training, which I like to think it did take me off, but I learned a lot. Like I learned a lot
Take you off.
through.
That was a pun, wasn't it? You did that on purpose.
Do
Easy
you like
getting
that?
taken off.
I'm good at that, I
Did you train people how to sort of deal with safety on board and all that sort of stuff?
Safety management. It was a safety management system, so to speak. I think what I did was I didn't want to be a one trick pony, and that was me in the automotive industry. I
Right.
wanted to see whether I guess my creativity and my learning and development passion could be kind of picked up and put into another world. And it I think ultimately it wasn't the world that I was meant to be in. I enjoyed it, and from an employer perspective, they were brilliant. And I learned so much. I got involved with cabin crew training.
Nice.
I brought in things like, or certainly explored kind of the whole the repetition learning, where we use systems like AI to then kind of ongoingly support people through repetition learning as
Yep.
opposed to just a point in time learning. So
Brilliant.
it taught me a lot. But ultimately, I miss the automotive industry. It's my bread and butter. It is my roots. So I moved back I moved back into the industry with Scania, who I would hands down say is probably one of the best places I've ever worked. I really, really enjoy it. But I get involved as leadership development early careers manager in every kind of aspect of the organization, really, because early careers are kind of the fresh impetus into the organization. And then you've got all the way kind of towards, I guess, the very other end of it is your leaders in the business who influence the organization. And, skills can be taught, but they shouldn't be told out. They should be taught through different learning mechanisms. And that's where the whole kind of experiential, hands-on, practical kind of experience for me really sits, because that's what I think pushes learning home, as opposed to being sat in a room, right, and being told. So I found my bread and butter. I love where I am, and I love kind of what I do and the impact I have on people.
But we'll hold that thought, because we're definitely going to dig into that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd love to know what it is you do, and how we do things slightly differently. But before we do that, just got a couple of sort of reflections, I guess, based on what you said. How do you, with something like training the technicians and being that master technician, as you said, how do you stay ahead of the curve? Because surely you're in an industry that's constantly changing, in the automotive industry.
Yeah, so I mean, quite rightly so. Yeah, the automotive world is a complex and innovative world. Car technology is continuously evolving. You know, even I mean, I class myself as quite young, but even looking back at my apprenticeship, it was very mechanical based.
Yeah.
Development throughout my apprenticeship, whereas now it's very much electrical diagnosis, high voltage diagnosis. Network. That there's so much that is that makes people have to move with the times to be able to be in this type of industry. So I mean, when it comes to coming to keeping up with technology, what was really great was the organizations that I have worked with when it comes to kind of the technical world. They continuously you know roll out additional learning and training and bring people to the factories to
Mm.
teach you. So when I was certainly at Volvo, if a new piece of technology or a new vehicle was coming out, you could go to the training center itself, and you'd have experiential learning through hands-on experience with the cars. You'd feel it. They'd put faults on the vehicles. You would actually feel kind of real life, but within an
Yeah. Yeah.
environment that
Yeah.
was safe, right? So
Playing in the sandpit, right?
playing
Yeah.
in the
Yeah. Yeah.
sandpit, yeah, it's a sandbox kind of
Yeah.
environment, isn't it? It's putting real world faults on, and the trainers that were training you knew exactly where the switches were that could turn them off and on, which was great. But from a technician perspective, it was amazing, because you would make mistakes and you would go to the wrong place, and you would learn through your kind of black box thinking, where you make a mistake, but you learn on what you've done, and actually then what would be the next thing that I would do to improve that. So kind of going back to the question, keeping up with innovation was all about learning, all about experiencing the new product, experience the new technology.
It,
Um,
it, it it feels to me that the role, they must have evolved so many times. And what I mean by that is, even thinking about, I'm obviously considerably older than yourself, but my first car was a Mini 1275 GT, which I absolutely loved. But I could open the bonnet and think, okay, well, there's the battery and the spark plug might be this, and this might be the problem, or whatever it may be. Now, I've obviously been through quite a few cars since then. I've opened the bonnet on my last car, which was a BMW, and there's literally nothing to look at apart from the water goes there and the oil goes there, and that was about as good as it got because everything was stock covered. Up to modern day, I drive a full electric vehicle now, where there's literally nothing for me to do. You know, I fill up the washer fluids, and that's about it. So it was strange. Actually, I had a problem with the car a few months back, and the one of the technicians came out, and literally this guy gets a laptop out and plugs it in and says, "That's the problem. It's the door actuator in that door." And I was like, "Well, sorry, you haven't opened the bonnet. You've got no spanners with you." And he's like, "No, computer tells me what's wrong with it." And you know,
Yeah.
and is it fair to say? So we don't want to get into the whole ins and outs of how you know, diagnostics of what's the problem with my car, but is it fair to say that as they're getting more technologically advanced, there's actually less that a mechanic can do? Is that fair to say?
Um, I think there's two elements to this. So I think old school kind of ways was that, you know, if you had a vehicle in your driveway, you know, you're the customer, you own a car, and something went wrong with it, or you needed to do something, you could typically drive it on your driveway. You could jack it up yourself. You could YouTube it, and you could learn about how to do it
Yeah.
yourself, right? And you would, you know, you could do that, which was great, right? That's I think now looking back, it feels like another world because I was
Mm.
also in that. You know, my first car was a Corsa B, you know, the bubble looking kind of Corsas. And, you know, I did wacky stuff to it. Like,
Do
you
you know
know,
what? So I'm going to have to cut in, Alex. We had those as company cars at McDonald's. So my old world, and listeners will know this, my
love
old
that.
world was McDonald's. My first company car as a business manager was a Corsa D, and its bizarre purple color. It was the weirdest thing. It was like a slightly off blue, sort of blueberry
Yeah.
sort of plumbing. Anyway, sorry, I interrupt.
So
It
mine was,
just, yeah,
I
I
can
loved
top
it.
that. Mine was baby blue, right? So, I mean, looking back, it was terrible when you compare it to the technology now, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, I did some wacky stuff to it. Like I put go faster stripes on it. I wired up hi-fi speakers to the rear speakers because I didn't quite know roughly how to put a sub in the boot, and
Yeah.
I just played around with it. So you know, there is that element of, you know, I think nowadays people are less inclined to pull their car on the driveway and tinker with it because, you know, when it comes to electrics and you know, when it comes to high voltage, cool, that's
God,
a
don't want to be
world that you
touching that.
just
Yeah.
absolutely don't want to touch. So you know, I wouldn't go as far as saying that um, it has less for mechanics to do. I
But
think
it's different, right?
I think it's different. I think it's changed the landscape because, you know, I think we see it. We're certainly seeing a newer generation of technician where, again, going back to when I was an apprentice, it was you getting your hands dirty, you know, covered in oil, all that. You know, it's the old school mechanical way. Whereas now you're more of an electrical diagnosis
Yeah.
technician where you're relying on technology to diagnose technology. So you're looking at your, you know, your diagnostic equipment, you're following a process within the diagnostic equipment, but you still have to have the ability and the technical expertise and the training to then kind of go, okay, right, it's taken me so far. What do I do now? You know,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
process will tell you that you can go and replace a control unit or go and look here, but you still have to go and look there. And you know, yeah, it's changed, but I think the demand on the technicians are still there because things go wrong, technology goes wrong, new systems are not plain sailing. They'll come into, you know, they'll release a new piece of technology, and you know, I'm sure it's been tried and tested under the research and development teams, etc., etc.
But
But
that's
things
like
go
running a
wrong.
pilot, isn't it? It's the educators that no one's thought about. Yeah.
Things go wrong, and you need people then to support that diagnosis. And it's a difficult world, but I think it's a really exciting one, certainly for the future. And you know, battery electric vehicle is not the only, I guess, power solution moving forward. You know, there are other options that, you know, technology and companies kind of look at, like, you know, Rolls-Royce look at hydrogen,
Yeah.
for example, in like airplane engines. You know, there's that technology, there's CNG, there's LLG, there's God, there's loads of other stuff. So there's just so many other options that, you know, battery electric is definitely has a future, but there's other ways to be, I guess, CO2 efficient and everything as
Interesting.
well.
So potentially it could just be the stopgap for now, and then further down the line we're running on something else.
100%.
We really need to dig into the whole learning piece, ironically. Before we do this, my final question on automotive, I promise you. Scania trucks, they're a damn sight bigger than the Volvos you used to work on. So is it easier to work on a truck or harder because it's bigger?
Do you know what? I've never been a HGV technician, so
Right.
I'm certainly not going to kind of belittle certainly our network, because they have a tough job and they do an amazing job. When I visited a couple of branches, what I absolutely loved in the HGV world compared to the passenger car world was you could tilt the cab. So you can lift you can
And
tilt
it's
the
there in
cab
front of you.
forward,
Yeah.
and your engine is right in front of you.
Nice.
And I was observing someone replace an alternator, and it was at the very top, kind of the top of the part of the engine. I was just like, that is a dream. Like, why did I go into the passenger car world when I could have been
Everything's so
working on
fiddly.
that?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, technology, I would argue that technology isn't always up to full speed as the passenger car world. They tend to bring the technology in. But there is certainly a lot of technology nowadays in the trucks. And, if you ever sit in a brand new truck, it's like sitting in a brand new, like, modern day vehicle. It's got the technology, it's got your digital dashboards, you've got your big screen. It's incredible. But I think mechanically wise, it's easier to a degree because you can access stuff,
Yeah.
but it's harder to a degree because an alternator isn't just this big on a car, it's like this big. And a head on a truck, with Scania you kind of have individual heads, but but if you're lifting a head off, it's not just, it's
You're
nice,
not
it
lifting
can,
that off. No.
yeah,
Yeah.
you got to get a forklift in and kind of lift it off and stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's that type of stuff. The challenges are different.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Right. So let's get back into the whole experiential and how you design courses and all of that nice stuff. So can you think of a moment, or was there a moment when you thought, do you know what? I'm done with this death by PowerPoint stuff. There's got to be a better way.
Oh, that's a good question. I
Because you
think
must
so.
have sat through that stuff in the past,
Oh,
the same as I have.
I've had it. Yeah, I've definitely had it. I wouldn't go as far back as my learning as a technician, because that's where a lot of it is hands-on experience, and
Yep.
naturally so, because that is the nature of the job. So the hands-on experience role was there. So I never really had death by PowerPoint in that environment, because technicians don't learn that way, and I think organizations know that. However, with no disrespect, when I moved over to kind of the EasyJet world,
Mm.
I remember being sat in a safety investigator training course, and it was a lot of content kind of push. And
Yep.
I mean, I'm not going to sit and belittle the role again, because it's a really complicated world, and that's just not my expertise. But what is my expertise is delivery and training and engagement and getting people up. But what I found in that course was, it was a lot of information that was kind of passed on to you, and then the expectation was to go away and be a fantastic investigator.
Yeah.
And it was like, yes, there's support moving forward, but the expectation of having to go away and then be a great trainer is, being a great investigator is, it's just not realistic, because no one retains that amount of knowledge in a day's worth of training. It's just, yeah.
Do you know what? I'm nodding along because I read something the other day, and it's a lovely quote that I knew I was going to use at some point. I didn't realize I'd use it this quickly. I'd really struggle to teach someone to swim by giving them a manual.
Yeah.
And I thought, it's that lovely analogy, isn't it? It's like, I can tell them everything they need to do, but really it needs to go beyond that. They need to do the trial. They need to do I need to be there to support and all of that nice stuff. And in a way, that kind of sums up the then and now approach to training, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. And do you know what? I think there's absolutely a space for kind of manuals and processes, right? Because I think when it comes to kind of like systems and skill, like that kind of skill set, you need the manuals and the processes to follow, and that's great. I think what you struggle to train in a conventional sit down and tell type of thing is like the soft skill stuff that comes out with things like experiential learning, where you know I could sit and preach to everybody about teamwork. I could sit and preach to everyone about good communication, well, that's great, but they're not physically then demonstrating that in
Yeah.
in an environment that then tests that, and then you can reflect on that. So yeah, I mean, you can, I think there's a world for teaching skills by standing and telling, and then there's the process, follow the process, great. But when it comes to the soft skill stuff and, you know, some of the practical stuff as well, experiential is 100% the way forward.
So your focus, you said, was on sort of first time manager. That sort of was that what you called it? Sorry, it was, wasn't it?
What's this, sorry?
It was like first time manager type program you do, don't you?
Scania.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the moment we've got, so first time managers, so future leaders in the business,
Okay.
so future leader, current leaders, and experienced leaders. You know, we've got a couple of different kind of programs that we offer.
And how, take me through how you've made them more experiential. I mean, maybe you could think of an example. I know you use the MTA construction kits, don't you? And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, maybe you want to explain what one of those is as well, and maybe how you use that on the course.
Yeah, of course. I mean, so part of my job is also early careers, and we've got some really good examples in that for experiential learning as well. So I'll come on to that in a bit. But yeah, when it comes to leadership is, it's made into this huge thing, or made out to be like it's this complicated beast that leadership is, you know, it's hard. Like everyone knows that it's a hard thing to lead people, but it's not this big plethora and big world. It's the little things and the way that you come across, the way you communicate, the way you conduct yourself. It's your behaviors, your standards, your attitudes type of thing.
Mm.
So as part of kind of our leadership program, certainly at kind of like the introductory level of leadership, we do a lot of self-awareness. So again, a good leader is all about being quite self-aware as how they show up and how they present themselves in certain tasks and scenarios. So yeah, so quite rightly so, you touched upon the MTA kit. God, the best way to describe it, it's a big Meccano set, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Yeah, in my world, and God, talk about showing my age. It's like a bizarre mix of Meccano and stickle bricks. Now you probably don't remember stickle
No,
bricks, but
I know what it is though. Yeah,
oh,
I know what it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're like the plastic Meccano, but this is like Meccano on a whole big scale, right? They're
Oh
massive
yeah.
nuts and bolts and big sort of spans, and there's ropes and pulleys and all of that nice stuff. Yeah.
It's your practical learner's dream, isn't it? It is amazing. Bolts, yeah, say ropes, wheels, you know, different size kind of
Mm.
long pieces that can bolt together. But you know, I think on face value, it's quite easy to look at something like that and go, well, that's a bit of fun. Do you know what I mean? You're going to come in, you're going to build, and then you're kind of going to walk away. Great.
Yeah.
That's
So what? Yeah. I mean,
so.
and I guess I'm interrupting you there, but because
Sorry.
you're actually starting to answer my next question, so maybe we want to go down that line, which is, how do we make that experiential learning not just a fun jolly? How do we actually, you know, how do we use that? And then I guess later on maybe we'll get into how you make that stick. But you're absolutely right. Now, and it's right to call it out there. It's quite hard, isn't it? Because it's like, yeah, why are we doing this fun activity? Almost like it's an icebreaker that we'll do at the start. We've done the fun bit, now we'll do the training. But
Yes.
those two things shouldn't be separated, right?
Yeah.
That's a completely wrong way of looking at it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so you're quite right in that, you know, it's there, it can be fun, but there has to be meaning and there has to be purpose behind when you do experiential learning. So the best way that I can describe, and the best way I personally think, you know, I'm some others might think differently, but for me it's not giving too much away at the start when it comes to experiential learning. So it's giving a short brief, giving them something to work towards, a clear goal, but
Yeah.
they now have to sit back or stand back and go, right, how are we gonna tackle this as
Yep.
a team, as an individual, as two different teams that have to work together? What is our goal? And when you give them too much direction, what you're doing is you're actually shaping the experience into what you want to happen.
Yeah.
When actually what needs to happen is you need to give them a loose brief. They need to step back and think for themselves and think, actually, naturally, what would be my approach here? That is when you get the right environment for learning, because no one is trying to tailor the way into the activity. They're doing it their own way. So certainly with some of the activities that I do, it's all about how people show up and work as a team. And what you naturally get is, because the brief is quite loose. So for an example, we use the MTA kit. not always in the way that's guided in the training that they've given us.
Yep.
We've done it where we break it up into two different kits, and one team has to build the chassis of a truck, trying to use this MTA kit, and the other team has to build the cab of the truck. There's a leader in each group, and essentially only the leaders can communicate together. So the message kind of is, you're only as good as what your team is
Yeah.
communicating to you.
And we're relying on the sort of the separate
Yeah.
parts of the business. And
Yeah, but I don't go into the whole, you need to plan, you need to do this, you need to think of roles. I just tell them, you need to build this truck in two different teams. One person can talk to the other person, and at the end of 20 minutes, you need to bring it together. Oh, okay. And you leave them to it, and it is incredible, the different personality types, the different leadership styles, the different communication styles that absolutely stick out. And normally, 9 times out of 10, if I've spent an hour or two with them before we do this activity, I can guess their personality types on the disc profile.
it's brilliant.
I can guess their leadership style. I can guess how they're going to work. Even by talking to them on their experience. You get technicians in the workshop, and I think, that come on these aspiring leader programs, and you think they're going to get real deep in that. They're going to be one that jumps up, picks everything up, and just runs with it. No planning, and kind of like just wants to get stuff done because they're very hands-on. And then you have the more strategic people that sit back, stand back, think about planning, and it just brings so much out of the activity. Now, because you get so much out of it, what you can then do is, and this is probably one of the most important parts of experiential learning, is you then have the time after to reflect.
Yeah.
And that's not me telling them, it's going, how do you think that went? Was it successful? What went wrong? Where did things break down? And that is where you then focus on the areas that break down, because then that becomes the learning piece. And then you can take that forward and then learn in your conventional styles like brainstorming or asking questions or group discussions, because it kind of hits home, because they've actually understood that is an area of development
Here's a
for
skill
them.
that you actually required and would have been helpful back. Yeah. Got absolutely good. As a facilitator in that room, I know there'll be some people listening to this going, "Oh my God, he said they can just do what they like." Well, he didn't say what they do like. I'd say it's almost like it is the similar sort of sandbox, right? As in, you've got an idea what you need to do and where you need to go, and how you do it's up to you. Does it really matter to you as a facilitator whether they achieve it or not? Because I'm sure that.
No, definitely not. In actual fact,
in some ways, I guess. Sorry, I'm putting words in your mouth there, but in some ways, the struggles is the learn, right?
100%. Yep. If I come out of an experiential learning activity and it was plain sailing and everything was reached and couldn't have gone any better.
Isn't it? That's not what it's going to be in the real world.
It's not. No, it's not. And it rarely happens. You have great outcomes, but the whole process doesn't always flow the way that you kind of want it to do with communication stuff. So, I think there's a huge learning if you get to the end of it and actually you haven't achieved what you were set out to do in the time that you've been given, because that's real life. And certainly in our environment, that's the real world. You get a deadline. Here's a priority that you need to work on. This is the outcome. And if you don't make it, then you haven't achieved what you're set out to do. And it's the same message in a very, I guess, fun and more experiential learning way.
Yeah.
So if they don't reach that target, it's all about kind of that root cause analysis. You go back and go, okay, why did that not happen? Oh, because I didn't know that the other team were doing this and they changed their plan halfway through. Okay. So they changed their plan and they didn't communicate that to you. What does that mean? Oh, okay. Well, they're working in silos and, they're not bringing people to the table that need to be okay. And it's them type of discussions that bring out the learning.
It is fascinating because as you're going through that, and obviously I'm a trainer as well, and I've been doing this job in a very similar way for many, many years. But as you're going through that, it's bizarre. I'm almost ticking off in my head going, right, we're going to talk about accountability. We're going to talk about communication skills. We're going to talk about, all of those things come out in that they didn't tell us. Also, it's their fault, right? Oh, okay. Because then you've got the blame culture and we've got change curve and wherever it goes. It's strange, isn't it? When you get to that point, or us blowing our own trumpets, but when you get to sort of that level of facilitation, you don't really know where the course is going to go. Do you know what I mean? You've almost got your bullet points of I've got to cover this and I've got to cover, here's my key topics. I'm sure there's things that come up. I know that I've been in this position, Alex, where someone will say something, I tell you what, and I go over to a flip chart, flip it over and go, Here's, didn't want to knock that off. Here's a circle of, what can you influence? What can you control? And I think that wasn't even on the agenda, but it depends on what happens in the room, and it's only those experiential things that makes that come out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're right. We are just following through slides and sort of ticking that off.
It's again a really good point because facilitation is about managing a room, right?
Yeah,
You can't have the answers to everything, but what you can do is you can bring people that bring the answers to the table, or bring a cognitive thinking way of trying to approach an answer or a scenario. So facilitation is all about managing a room and managing people, right? So you're right in that it absolutely depends on your audience as to what direction that course is going to cover.
yeah.
And I in my mind will have supporting slides and flow of what the day is going to feel and look like for the training. Now I kind of lead with that mindset of, if you've got a room and they take it on a bit of a tangent, then there's a reason that that's happening, and you go, actually, that's where they're bringing,
That's where
I
their
guess,
need is to a certain
that's what's
extent.
needed. Yeah, yeah, 100%, because that's where the focus of the conversation has gone to. Doesn't mean that the rest of the content shouldn't be covered, but certainly it's about continuously being adaptable with your training so that you can go, right, we've talked about this quite a lot. That does relate to this topic later on. So we'll definitely cover that in its entirety. But actually, we've kind of covered a little bit of X, Y, and Z earlier on today with these discussions. So we can kind of hide the slides and
Yeah,
re-unhide
yeah.
them in
No,
the
totally.
future and stuff like that. So it's adaptability. That's all it is. And there, if you feel like the content is being completely way off topic, then that's another scenario
Yeah.
that you
No, no,
have
no.
to bring back to the table, right? But I love the difference, and I love the variances of people that come in the room and train, because it's always so different, and especially in the automotive world. Again, going back to what we said before, with like, you've got your technicians that are very, you know, I,
I was going to say, you may have had a mechanic or technician, sorry, that's, I don't know, spent 20 years getting their hands dirty on diesel engines. And now they're coming into your room and you're saying, right, okay, we're going to build this with a, it, and then I guess you've also got newer people coming into the business who obviously maybe don't have that experience, and their approach to sort of training is going to be completely different, and they want to do it in a slightly different way. So that must be quite hard for you as well, sort of try and cater to everyone and sort of keep the whole room together.
yeah, this is another really important point, because I can sit and stand here and I can sit here and say, how amazing experiential learning is, and I absolutely. But to some, I think to others, it can be quite uncomfortable, and you do have to cater for people's learning styles and other things like accessibility needs, and you have
Yeah,
to think about your learner, because I could say, oh, let's all walk up the mountain, and there's a lesson in this because it's all about navigation and communication and okay, but what if someone can't do that? So
yeah,
you really do need to know your audience before you think about what you're going to do when it comes to experiential learning. And then that ties then into the different learning styles. Some people are very much like, they could sit and have their head in a book, and they could read a book, and they could, take it all in, and that's how they learn. You have people that absolutely hate the thought of working in a group, and they're the ones that sat back and they don't really take much out of it because they're not hands in, they're just kind of riding the wave and letting other people do it. And for them, maybe it's a bit more of a reflective learning that they like the they like more. So,
yeah.
and there'll be others that like to be kind of sat in a training room and spoken at, as long as they get the opportunities to share and reflect and debate or whatever that might be. So I think learning has to be, it's so cliche, but it has to be blended. Like, if you're bringing experiential learning into it, you have to have theory, you have to have your hands on, you have to have your imagery and your video and your diagrams, you have to have your brainstorming, you have to have your group discussions. That, I think, if you put that all into a bubble, you're capturing everybody then, and you can't always please everybody in every single situation that you do, but what you can do is cater for everybody in your training
So,
courses.
love that. Alex, you may not be able to answer this. I don't know, but do you think this experiential stuff you do, is that more suited to some groups than others? So you said about early careers, for example, and and this again, I think, is probably an assumption people make, and it's not necessarily true. So they think, oh, well, the younger people coming through, they'll want to do all these fun games and all the rest of it. But if I'm designing a workshop for, say, senior leaders, I better not do any of that stuff, because they might just think, sorry, why are we doing these games? If you want to look at it that way, can we just do the workshop and tick the box? Have you seen that? Does it change the way you design depending on knowing who the audience is?
Um, I think when we think generational, for example, so if I'm thinking about early careers, that tends to be kind of, people that are coming out of school, that are
Yeah,
starting apprenticeships, or, coming on undergraduate or graduate programs. I think if we were to generalize, it would be quite unfair, because I think there are people in the early careers sector that learn in one way and learn in a different way. And then you look at your senior management, and it's exactly the same dynamic.
yeah,
Everybody is individual with the way they learn. But I would say that what brings the best out of a learning environment, certainly experiential stuff, is having your variations of experience in, because I think networking and the whole concept of bringing different experiences into the room is where the true value in learning
yeah.
actually lies, because you're not getting the same mindsets in one room that all think the same, all act the same. You just you're just going to get the same discussions, the same outputs. What you want is people coming from a different perspective, another group coming from a different perspective. So I think experiential learning, it caters to every generation, every experience. It's just making sure that you just cover all bases when it comes to learning, because then you will always cover everybody like that. You can't cater to for an individual person. You can't cater for a generation, because then you're assuming that all the young people just want to sit in a room and just be told, and they can just leave and that's done. That'd be such an unfair
Yes,
generalization of
yeah,
that.
totally. I'm
So
so glad the way you've answered it, because I know it was a leading question, but I think that is absolutely right. That there is often this assumption that it's like, well, we'll do that for them and that for them and that for them. It can't be that way. It has to be, what can that bring? And ironically, when we said about, the young people they've just come out of school, and that, well, in fact, that's probably very sit and listen to this lecture and don't ask any questions and don't get involved, and or whatever it may be. So actually, they're probably more used to that, and than some of the more experienced guys might be. Right, I've got two questions for you.
yeah,
Okay, two final questions. I mean, would you
yeah.
believe we're close to 40 minutes already? And it just feels like you're
Wow,
like, I know. I said to you like
I could
half
talk
hour, and you're
forever.
like, yeah, well, what are we going to talk about for half hour? First one, what's your favourite activity? What wouldn't you want to take out?
Oh, do you know what? So I'm going to talk about the early career stuff with this
Brilliant.
question, because what we do in Scania is we send all of our kind of early careers people that are joining the organisation on onboarding residential. So we send them all the way up to the Peak District, and what they do in that week is it's incredible the outcomes you get from it. So we do rock climbing, we do rafting, we do caving, we do hiking. They do like fire building. There's just this whole world of different activities that they do across the week, and that is something that I would never want to take from an onboarding experience, certainly in
Yeah,
this kind of early careers market, because what you get from it is at the very beginning, they come onto the program or come onto the onboarding experience, and they're quiet. They're very reserved. They're a little bit shy. They're probably quite nervous about what to expect as part of the experiential learning piece. But what you get at the very end of it is relationships and confidence that you just wouldn't imagine that you would get from doing activities like that. They have to plan every evening what they're going to do in the activity the next day, and they're working as a team and they're building relationships without them even realizing that they're doing it. So when they come away and they go off back into the dealer network, where they then are individual apprentices in
yeah.
each different branch, when they come on the training courses, they're back together again, and they've built the relationships during the onboarding to be able to have them like nice
Oh,
conversations. So that's something that I would absolutely not take out of what we do, because it brings so much from it.
as you were saying that, th- obviously there's a lot of expense in that. That's a huge investment to do. But just from your passion and what you're saying about it, that sounds like an investment as opposed to a cost. Do you know what I mean? For the future and for them. And we shouldn't downplay that sort of Scania do that sort of stuff and get these people on board.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, every organization has to think about costs because ultimately they're an organization. They need to make money. They need to be clever with their money and they need to invest it in the right ways. And I think it only becomes a good investment, like you say, when you get a return on the investment itself. And, these things can cost money. They're not always the cheapest thing to do. But like you say, what you get off the back end of it far exceeds the money that's invested into that. You get confidence and you get ability and you get capability and you get, relationship buildings, you get teamwork, you get communication, you get all of that. And that is the stuff that I feel like you can't put a price on because they're the skills that are really difficult to train. They're the skills that are difficult to teach because that's people's personality and that's people's way of working. And you're basically changing the way that people would normally do stuff. And that is really difficult. So if you can do that through experiential learning, the investment is there.
We're going to have to almost close it there purely because at the start I said you're all about feeling the learning, and you almost said it there. It's like that's stuff that you can't teach, but people just need to feel how it feels to be part of that team and feel. Yeah, absolutely love that. Right, my last question, and again, listeners of the pod will know what's coming. What's the ultimate weekend look like for you? Take yourself away from work. Paint a picture of Alex for us.
God, what is a good
this is why I don't
for
send
me?
these in advance. You're on the spot. Now.
I'm a huge sports guy. If my football team win, I'm happy. Yeah. So if Oxford United win, I'm a happy boy. But yeah, I mean, a perfect
that
weekend
must be quite a rare occurrence, isn't it?
Oh, it is a rare occurrence. Trust me. Yeah.
I say that as an Ipswich fan. I think you've beaten us
You're in the
twice
same league. Yeah, you're doing great. We're not. Yeah. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Well, we've got 4 sides to our ground for a start, but anyway, let's not go there.
Oh, that's a touchy subject. We've got a new stadium coming, so it's all good.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. For me, it's a bit of downtime. Seeing the family, spending time with the family. Getting out, getting some fresh air, getting activity under your belt. Just being a bit wholesome, and just because work is crazy and work is busy. So if I can just have time at the weekend, just to down the tools and relax, I'll bring a good Alex on a Monday.
Fantastic. What a way to finish. Alex, thanks again so much for your time. And I'm so, as I said to you, I'm so pleased to be back behind the mic. I've missed it. I really have.
Love that.
And what a lovely way to set off the new season with chatting to someone like yourself. So thanks again for giving up your time. I really appreciate it. I'm going to play the outro and I'll catch you on the other side, mate.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us today. Feeling curious to learn more about how we help people remember stuff? Well, why not sign up for a free trial of our AI-powered bite-sized learning app, BentoBot? You can do that easily at bentobot.com. And you can catch up on interviews with all of our previous guests by subscribing to this pod via Apple Podcasts or any podcast platform. Until next time, take care.